In this video, we're going to look at sketching a little bit more closely and some of the things that happen while creating a sketch. So I'm going to start a 2D sketch and choose a work plane. Now, for example, using the line tool. As I start to create the line tool, or use the line tool, and make some shapes, okay, I'm just going to have a region here. You may think that you can come along and easily just grab geometry and move it to adjust. And sometimes you see that while you intended to only move one thing, other things are moving. And part of that has to do with Inventor creating some automatic constraints. You will see up here under the Sketch tab in the Constraint panel that there are Constraint Tools. And while I didn't come up here and grab any of them, some of these have already been applied as I was clicking and creating my lines. And so you need to be aware that Inventor is doing that. Also, you would want to be aware of how to see what constraints there are and how to remove them if one of the created constraints is one that you would like to delete. Hitting the F8 key will show constraints on your sheet. Okay, F9 will make them disappear. So after hitting F8, I can see that these two segments are required to be perpendicular. But what if I didn't want them to be perpendicular? Okay, I wanted to be able to grab one of these and move it. And I'm seeing some other constraints as I come near those points, right? Do you find, or can you find that icon up there? That icon, if I hover over it, it's called a coincident constraint. It means the 2 points are locked together, that they're really locked to being the same geometry. Okay, let's try deleting this perpendicular. Maybe I didn't want these to have to be perpendicular, but because of where I was at when I clicked, Inventor said it looks like you want this to be a 90-degree angle, so we're going to lock that into a 90. I can right click on that constraint when it's highlighted in red and say delete, and now these should be free to not be 90 degrees. Notice that I can move this around and get that to change from 90. Now this segment right here has a constraint on it, and that symbol right there is the vertical constraint. So this line's being stuck at 90 degrees. Maybe I don't want that to be stuck perpendicular. Right click and say delete. Now those constraints that happen, they're actually really nice because if you're careful, often we do want them to exist. Okay, but sometimes you don't. And so you just need to be aware as you are making lines and sketching that Inventor might be creating constraints, and you might need to come along and get rid of those. You can click and drag these symbols to the outside if you find a neater place for them. Remember to toggle them on and off. It's the F8 and F9 key. So F8 will show constraints, F9 will delete constraints. And then if you'd like to, or I'm sorry, not delete them, but sorry, hide them. If you would like to delete them, you need to right click on the constraint and choose delete. And so now these would be able to be moved. And if you don't want those coincident constraints, you can highlight those and delete those as well, so that you can break that connection where those 2 points were. So that's a little more about sketching and constraints. I would encourage you to play around with these constraint tools and see what you can do with them.